Now you can hear me. Hey, everybody. How are you doing? It is good to be with you tonight. It is May 1st. Can you believe it? We're in the month of May. 1 month ago today, April 1st, jury selection began in the Chad Daybell trial. It was April Fool's Day. It took a week to impanel the jury, get everything taken care of. And we've been in this trial officially a month now, and we have had 40 witnesses, maybe 39 to 40. I got to get the exact count. It was a busy day in the courtroom. Thanks for being here. I'm Nate Eaton. This is Courtroom Insider. I come to you live every night from Ada County, Boise, Idaho, to bring you the latest on the Chad Daybell case. If you're just tuning in for the first time ever, it's a complicated case, but the bottom line is this is the man facing 3 counts of first-degree murder for his wife, Tammy Daybell, and 2 children, J.J. Vallow and Tylee Ryan. They belonged to his current wife, Lori Vallow. Last year, Lori Vallow was found guilty on multiple charges of murder, conspiracy to commit murder. She's serving a life sentence, 3 life sentences. Chad Daybell also faces conspiracy to commit murder charges for Tammy, JJ, and Tylee. He faces a charge of felony grand theft and felony insurance fraud. So every day we break down what happened in court, and we had 5 witnesses on the stand today. Before I go any further, I have to thank the kind lady who brought me cough drops today. Many of you said the best cough drops to get are Trader Joe's cough drops, and so she works at Trader Joe's. She left the court today at lunch and went down to Trader Joe's and brought me some of these. So I haven't opened them. I'm going to do it right now. We'll see if this cures my cough. If you hear me cough during the broadcast, don't worry. It is hard to talk and have something in my mouth, so I'm going to have to take it out. Okay. I'll suck on it after. Anyway, let's get to it. I'm wasting time. I don't want to waste your time. Here's what we've got today. Autopsies, lies, and insurance money. And health insurance and life insurance. All that sort of stuff. We're going to talk about it tonight. We have Matt Daybell. Chad Daybell's brother was in court, not as a suspect, not as a witness, as a patron. He sat in the gallery with Larry N.K. Woodcock and Vicky Hoban. He was not sitting on the defense side. Make that very clear. He has been adamantly against everything that's happened with this case, and he has publicly said in previous statements. 5 witnesses, as I mentioned, were called to testify today. The medical examiner talked about Tammy's autopsy. Neighbors spoke from the stand, including, the Gilberts. They were there. They testified. I'll play you some of that. Chad Daybell, after his new wife, Lori Vallow, was locked up, went to the neighbors and said, "Christ sent me here to tell you you should mortgage your house to get Lori out of jail. I need bond money." I'll play you the clip. We had a teacher and an insurance, I should say broker. I wrote agent. I guess there is a difference. A broker was on the stand. I want to take your questions. And of course, we will remember Tammy and JJ and Tylee. So without further ado, let me jump into that. I do want to say a minute about Matt Daybell. He didn't want to do an interview, understandable. We did have a long conversation. It was off the record, but he did say that, he was there today in support of Larry, of Kay, of the families that have been affected and traumatized by this. He has not seen Chad since Tammy's memorial in October of 2019. Chad has cut him off. Chad's children have cut him off. And he walked in the courtroom, and I knew he was coming in. I got in my seat, so I sat with my eyes focused on Chad to see what Chad would do when Matt walked in. And Chad was talking with Pryor, kind of like this, and when he saw Matt, he said, "That's my brother." And Pryor looked over. And Chad repeatedly tried to make eye contact with him. Matt did with him too. And then Matt stayed the entire day. At one point, we had to shuffle our seating because they were showing the autopsy photos. And at one point, Matt ended up on the second row with a direct shot of Chad, and no one was on the first row. So really the only person in between them was like John Pryor. And there was the divider part of the courtroom. But anyway, he was there, and I understand he'll be back tomorrow. And maybe the next day too. Remember all the talk of the stairs this week? We talked about it the past 2 nights. John Pryor saying that the home is a 1-story home. Guess what? Those stairs came up again today. And that issue we had about, are there stairs, are there not? That kind of got cleared up with the witnesses. And you know what? Today, for the first time, I would say, we really saw the prosecutors objecting to John Pryor's questioning. That he was getting too narrative. Instead of asking a question, he would say something like, if you go down to Winco, they only sell donuts, right? He was testifying, not asking, are you aware if Winco sells other products than donuts? Just an example. Winco sells all sorts of stuff. They sell candy. That's where I get my candy. So they talked about that. They objected a lot. It got a little fiery, but it was, people noticed. I'm going to play you some of the clips here today. I think that we're going to see the prosecutors doing that a lot more going forward. That John Pryor will not be able to get up there and testify and then ask for reassurance or ask for yes, no. Okay, so that's kind of what I wanted to say. I also, coming up in a minute, we have, I believe, the youngest people I've seen to attend the trial. Some young men from Rexburg came with their dad today, and I interviewed them after court, and you'll hear what they thought of the trial. They stayed the whole day. We've seen maybe 18, 19, 20-year-olds. These guys are a lot younger. We haven't seen any. I wouldn't recommend bringing like a 10 or a 12-year-old. That's probably too young, but these are some young guys that came to see how the wheels of justice work. So let's start off with Dr. Eric Christensen. This is a smart dude. He was the medical examiner, chief medical examiner in Utah until he retired just a few years ago. He has performed 7,200 to 7,300 autopsies. That is a lot of dead bodies. He explained what the difference is between a medical examiner and a coroner. A lot of states have coroners. They are elected positions. Like in Idaho, we have a coroner system. A lot of states, like Utah, have medical examiner systems. The difference is a medical examiner is a trained doctor. They go through school to learn about this stuff. They have to put in X amount of hours. They go through training. They do all sorts of rigorous stuff to perform autopsies. Coroners do not perform autopsies. Coroners will send bodies that need autopsies to the medical examiner, and the medical examiner will decide if a body needs an autopsy. So he is a medical examiner. He's not a coroner. He attended Tammy Daybell's exhumation. Now, how this process worked, a court order, they had to go to court to exhume the body. And so he went to court when the argument was made that she needed to be exhumed. After he went to the cemetery, he was there when they pulled her out of the ground. He gave an example of one exhumation he went to, not Tammy's, where they opened the coffin and there was so much water the body was waterlogged. That was not the case with Tammy. Tammy's body was in good shape. The casket, the vault was sealed. There weren't any problems. He followed the hearse to the funeral home, to the place where they did the autopsy. Did the autopsy. He was with the body, making sure, there was no contamination, nothing like that. He detailed the autopsy process, the fact that photos are taken every step of the way. Photos are taken of the outside with the clothes on the body. Photos are taken once the clothes come off. Photos are taken of any wounds, any scratches, injuries, bruises, whatever. And he did talk about bruises on Tammy's body. We'll talk about that in a sec. He said that Tammy died of asphyxia, and the manner of death was homicide. Cause of death, asphyxia. Manner of death, homicide. Here is where he talks with Lindsay Blake about what this means.
And when you use the term homicide, can you talk about what that means in relation to your office?
Sure. It is different from, for example, how lawyers or police might use that term. For us, homicide is a vital records determination that we make. In this case, we didn't sign the death certificate, but that's the way we use the term. It's a determination of the circumstances surrounding the death, and it means to us that another person was involved in that person's death. It does not imply intent, although it does not exclude it either.
And
So
when
it's a
we
little
talk
different than in
about
the. Oh,
asphyxia,
one
can
moment.
you tell the jury what you mean by the term asphyxia?
Asphyxia means that the person was unable to get enough oxygen.
Can there be a number of causes or different means by which asphyxia can occur?
Yes,
Can you talk about some of those?
sure. You can have asphyxia can result from anything that occludes the airway, either externally or internally. So, smothering of any type, anything that blocks the mouth and nose could lead to asphyxia. Choking, anything that blocks the airway internally, whether it's food or something stuffed in someone's mouth or whatever, maybe all of those things can lead to asphyxia. Asphyxia can also result from drowning. Drowning is technically a form of asphyxia. You can also have asphyxial deaths that result from chemical asphyxiants. Carbon monoxide is one of those. Cyanide is another that impair your body's ability to release oxygen to tissues, and so they don't get enough oxygen.
Okay, so there he explained what asphyxia is. And um, homicide, basically, someone did not die naturally on their own. He was asked about if there was any sign of seizures. Did Tammy have a seizure? He said that there wasn't any. They look at every organ. They look at the brain. They look at the heart. They look at the kidneys. They look at the liver. They look at every organ that they possibly can. No sign of seizures. Nothing on her health history that showed she had any major health issues. There were no intoxicants in her body. There was Her heart was healthy. It was strong. Um, then he said they discovered some bruises that were fresh because of the way what they do is they discovered the bruises, and from how I understood, they're able to take little parts of it, cut them out, and look at them under a microscope. They're able to see, if the blood was pooled, or if they're yellow, they're older bruises. These were darker bruises, newer bruises. And he showed on the screen where the bruises were. I'm going to show you here. There were 8 bruises, I believe. So you have the one here on her chest, one here on the front of her left arm. That's the belly button. That's not a bruise. 1, 2, 3, 4 on the right arm. And then on the back of the right arm, 1, 2, 3, 4. Nothing on the left. So they were fresh bruises, and they were in a spot, he said, that where someone might try to hold somebody down. And you could grip right over here on the front, and then the back of your hand, whoever's gripping, could be here. You could grip, a couple of places on the arms if you're holding someone down. Then we went into stuff about rigor mortis. This is where the body gets cold and stiff. This happens, he said, 1 to 2 hours after death. It takes a little bit of time for your body to, stiffen up. But anything newer than an hour would be highly unlikely based on the condition of the body when it dies. So basically, if you walk into a house and there's a dead body, heaven forbid, and you go over and touch it and it's stiff and it's firm and it's cold, that body likely has been dead more than an hour. Likely longer, he said. So she had been dead by the time Chad claimed to have found her for some time. The prosecutor motioned to admit exhibits showing the autopsy photos. We did not see them in court. They made everybody on the side of the courtroom with the jury move over so that there wasn't any chance of seeing their screens that didn't show on the projector. But he went through photo by photo showing these wounds, or showing these bruises, close-ups, tight shots, all of that. The jury got to see that. He went in depth about the autopsy, said that, Tammy was healthy. Tammy was healthy. There was nothing in her system that could have caused this death. And also, someone her age doesn't suddenly just develop a seizure, let alone a seizure that kills them. He said that's highly, highly unlikely. He did admit that sometimes people just die. And if they just die, then the cause of death is undetermined. That's what they'll put on the death certificate. But for Tammy, they were able to determine it was asphyxia. Now, Pryor got up to cross-examine him. I told you a minute ago about the prosecutor objecting and not letting up. And here's an example of an exchange they had, John Pryor with Lindsay Blake and the witness, with Judge Boyce ruling on these objections, granting some, sustaining some, overruling the others. Take a listen.
And at this point, you had initially indicated that you went in front of you didn't, but you were present when a hearing was held in front of a judge to make a determination as to whether or not they would have exhumed Tammy Daybell. Is that right?
That's correct.
And do you recall from your knowledge what was the reason for the exhuming the body at that time?
My recollection is it was to determine the cause of death.
Well, there had to have been some facts. You don't get to just dig somebody up.
Your Honor, counsel's testifying. Move to strike.
Sustain.
There has to be a reason at the hearing to determine why you're exhuming.
Your Honor, counsel's still testifying.
Sustain.
Isn't it true, doctor, that there has to be a reason for the exhumation and not just be to re-examine findings? Is that correct?
I would assume so, yes.
Well, you were present. What was the reason given for digging Tammy Daybell's body back up?
I don't recall specifically what was presented.
Okay, so what was the purpose of you going there if you don't remember why they dug her up?
Objection, Your Honor. Argumentative.
Sustain.
Do you recall whether or not there were discussions about surrounding circumstances that could have influenced a decision to exhume?
I believe there were, yes.
Okay, and those circumstances that they justified for exhuming were the death of Charles Vallow, right?
Objection, Your Honor. Counsel's testifying. The witness has said he doesn't recall.
The fact is those additional circumstances that you based the reason to dig Tammy Daybell up out of the ground was because of the death of Charles Vallow.
Objection, Your Honor. Counsel's misstating. This witness was not the one that requested the exhumation.
Sustain.
Do you recall whether or not there was a discussion about the death of Charles Vallow at the exhumation hearing?
I do not.
Do you recall whether there was discussion of Brandon Boudreaux as a basis for the exhumation of Tammy Daybell's body?
I also do not know.
Okay, so you don't remember any reason, is that right, for why they decided to dig a body up out of the ground?
Objection, Your Honor. Argumentative, and it's asked and answered.
Sustained.
You don't have any explanation that you recall as to why they dug Tammy Daybell's body up out of the ground, do you?
Objection, Your Honor. Argumentative and asked and answered.
Overruled on that.
You don't have any,
Prior, he gets to answer though.
I think I said previously, my understanding was to determine the cause of death.
okay, but you don't specifically remember the factors as to why they dug her up, right? That were offered to a judge?
I don't remember the specifics of the discussion.
All right, so got a little back and forth there. Again, I think we might be seeing more of that from the prosecution as time goes on. Rocky Wixom later on today was, with other witnesses, was objecting and had his hand on the mic, ready to go, ready to object. And it'll be interesting to see how that plays out. So after, the background of that was John Pryor was trying to find out from the medical examiner about this court hearing where Tammy Daybell was ordered to be exhumed. The medical examiner has nothing to do with that. All he was given was a notice that go to court, get the approval, and then he does his job to do the autopsy. He didn't decide to do that. And then John Pryor was trying to bring in Charles Vallow and Brandon Boudreaux, which, of course, Lindsay Blake there was saying that doesn't have to do with this case. So, and objecting all sorts of things, along those lines. So there was back and forth between the witness and between Pryor, and Lindsay Blake got up on recross to kind of put a nail in, make her point, tie up the loose ends, and here's some of what she said.
In the medical reports you reviewed, you didn't see any sign of low blood pressure.
I did not.
In the medical records you reviewed, did you see any signs of seizures?
No.
In the medical reports you reviewed, did you see any indication that Tammy had had a prior history of any negative drug interactions between her prescription medication and herbal remedies?
No.
And counsel asked you about the bruises on Tammy and them being labeled as not specific. Do you
Yes.
recall that?
Yes.
You indicated that sometimes you are able to form an opinion as to how those may have been inflicted. Is that correct?
I can answer hypotheticals about how they may have been inflicted. Yes.
And based on your training and experience, where those bruises were located, could they be consistent with someone being restrained?
They could be. Yes.
And you were asked a lot about those pictures and if someone was holding Tammy down and then suffocating her. Do you recall that line of questioning?
Yes. Yes.
Where the bruises were located, would it be possible for someone to have been restraining her while someone else suffocated her?
It's possible.
Based on your experience and and the autopsy and your review of documents, in your opinion, is it likely that Tammy died of a seizure?
No.
Based on your training, experience, review of the records and autopsy, is it likely that Tammy Daybell died of a cardiac arrhythmia?
No.
Based on your experience, review of the documents and autopsy, is it likely Tammy Daybell died of a drug overdose or drug interaction?
No.
Based on your experience, training, review of reports on the autopsy, is it your opinion Tammy most likely or likely died of asphyxiation?
Yes.
And again, what did you determine the cause of death to be?
Asphyxia.
And what did you determine the manner of death to be?
Homicide.
I have no further questions.
You hear that, and I just wonder what was going through Tammy's mind there in that moment. We don't know. Did she really go to bed? We assume she went to bed. We don't know if the coughing and the vomiting, did any of that happen? Probably not. We will probably never know. Garth was at the haunted house, who lived at the home, their son, working till about 1 a.m. Another witness testified to that. So was Tammy in bed, sound asleep, and this happens in her sleep? Was she awake? Was she jolted awake to something in her room? Who did what? I don't know if we'll learn that during this trial as much as we want to. Same as we want to know how Tylee Ryan died. We want to know what happened. We didn't learn that during Lori Vallow's trial, and we won't learn it now. The experts, the top experts in the state, could not determine how she died, just that there's very little of her left. And so with Tammy's last known breath in her bed, what happened and who did it? Well, the prosecution says Chad Daybell did it, and likely Alex Cox, but he's not here anymore. The next witness was Alice Gilbert. Do you remember Miss Gilbert from Lori's trial a year ago, I haven't forgotten her. She and her husband were familiar with Chad's books and moved to Rexburg, to Salem, and liked Chad's books. I think that her husband said he had read them all. They were friends with Chad. They were in the same LDS ward. They'd go to church together. Alice Gilbert was the Relief Society president. And in every ward congregation, there's a leader of the women. And that's what Alice Gilbert was. Excuse me. She was over the women in the ward, and she had a presidency. She had 2 assistants and a secretary. And Tammy Daybell was in this presidency. And Alice testified they'd get together once a week, I think on Wednesdays for about an hour or 2. And then on Sundays, they'd see each other. They were friends. They got along great. They lived near each other. And so when the morning came when Tammy died and they got the call that she was dead, Emma called, was hysterical. And of course, Alice was stunned, and her husband, Todd, was stunned too. They went over to the house, and the kids were there in shock, they said, just sitting there. And Chad was very business. They hadn't eaten breakfast. The Gilberts went down to McDonald's, picked up a few things, brought them back to the house, gave them to the kids. And Chad said the funeral's Tuesday. She said, Tuesday? Like, this was Saturday in Springville. Like, that's far. 8 hours, I believe she said. So she asked Chad, was this planned? And he said, no, it wasn't planned. And she kept thinking in her mind, this was planned. And she was asked about why she went to the funeral. Here's what she said.
Did Chad respond when you asked if he had already planned the funeral or if he and Tammy had talked about it before?
He said no, but I felt like it had been planned.
Did you end up attending the funeral?
Yes. I needed to see her. So my husband and I went to the funeral in Springfield. And I needed to see her in the casket. And she looked nice in the casket.
Did you ever talk to Chad about why he held the funeral in Springville?
I didn't. I just assumed it was because they lived there before. So I didn't ask.
When you were at the funeral, do you recall making any observations of Chad?
When we viewed her before the funeral, and it was just him standing by the casket. It didn't seem really mournful with him. I said, oh, she looks good. And he said, yes, she does. And we didn't cry. We didn't, it didn't seem mournful. And then we went into the chapel to sit for the funeral. And I sat by, and our bishop had driven down, so we sat with him.
Then they went home. And a few nights later, they called Chad to say, hey, can we bring you a pizza? And he said, well, how about I come to your house? So Chad went to their house by himself, and he told them he had found a woman. And they were stunned. And he wanted them to meet her. And the Gilberts volunteer in the temple to work and help out there. And they went to the temple for their shift, I think on a Tuesday night. And they were in a room waiting for a meeting to get started when they said Chad tapped them on the shoulder and wanted to introduce them to Lori. And Melanie Boudreau was there, and another person. They didn't say who. And so they met Lori and Chad. And remember, Tammy's been dead for maybe a little over a week. if that. Yeah, I'm sure it was a little over a week. Then they asked if they could come over to the Gilbert's house, Chad and Lori, and they said it was awkward. Chad and Lori were all over each other, handsy, like teenagers, they said, like little giddy teenagers. They asked Lori if she had any kids, and she said she didn't give a number, and then Chad said that she recently had a daughter who died. And they assumed that Lori was an empty nester. And then they got married. And they went back to the Gilberts and showed them the wedding photos and showed them every wedding photo. So it sounds to me the Gilberts and Chad were pretty close for him to keep going back to this house. And again, at this point, the Gilberts did not know that Lori's children were missing. They didn't know anything really about her, except Chad was showing these photos of their wedding on the beach, doing the hula. And then Lori gets arrested. After they go to Hawaii, she gets arrested. They bring her back. And Chad calls on his good friends, the Gilberts, for help. And here is what Alice said happened.
At some point, did you learn that Lori's children were missing?
I did learn. I learned, let's see. I believe it was in November, I learned that they were missing. And I learned who their mother was and that she was married to Chad. So my husband and I called Chad and asked him, are these her children that are missing? And he said that, yes, that it was a custody battle and that when everything came out, it would be fine.
After his marriage, did Chad ever come to your residence again?
Yes, he came and showed us wedding pictures of their wedding there in Hawaii, and was quite excited to show us his wedding pictures.
And do you recall approximately how much time had passed between he and Lori's first visit to your house and then that second visit when they were married?
I think it was 2 weeks.
Were you surprised to see wedding photos?
Yes,
And why were you surprised?
I was surprised they'd got married so early. I was really surprised when they had told me they didn't know when or how, but then I was surprised that it was so early.
And you were friends with Tammy, right?
Yes.
At some point after that visit, when Chad and Lori showed you the wedding photos, did Chad come to your residence again?
Yes.
Do you recall approximately when that would have been?
He came after Lori was arrested in Hawaii, and he had moved back to Idaho, and he came and asked if he could, first asked if he could I think it was when her first bond was gonna come up. And that's when he asked us if we would put our house up for her bond.
And prior to asking for you to put up the bond, do you recall if he ever asked if he could live with you?
Yes, he did.
And what did you tell him?
Well, first it was like an overnight, if he could be overnight. And I was okay with an overnight, but I could not let him live with us. So we told him that our daughter was going to move in and there wouldn't be any room.
And then he'd ask you to consider putting up some bond money or putting up your property. Is that correct?
Judge, I'm going to object at this point. We're getting a little leading.
Sustained.
And I think you had previously indicated that he asked you about bond. Do
Yes.
you recall what he asked you in relation to that?
When he came in, he was quite upset, and he said he had to get her out of jail, and that he cried and he said it was just killing her to be in jail, and could we put our house up for bond? And we asked him if he had family that could help him. He said no. And he mentioned another friend, I think. He said he couldn't help him. And we said we would think about it, and I think that was a Saturday. Sunday, we got a text from him, and he wanted to bring the bondswoman to our home and to meet her at our house that Sunday.
And did you in fact have another conversation with Chad about posting bond or putting your property up?
Yes, there was 2 conversations. This was the first one.
And what did you ultimately end up deciding?
No.
Could you imagine if your neighbor whose kids are well, I guess not their kids, but whose spouse dies, and then a month or so later, the kids of the spouse are reported missing, and her husband had died, and this neighbor comes to you and says, will you put your house up for bond to get my new wife out? And by the way, can I live with you? And I'm sure it was just all sorts of crazy thoughts through their head. Ms. Gilbert also asked about Tylee. She said, you're asking me a question. Tell me about you told me that your wife's daughter had died, and Chad denied it. And she brought up Tylee, and Chad used in the past tense, well, she didn't like me. Talking about the missing Tylee. So was Tylee dead? Was she missing? That was the question that Miss Gilbert had, Alice had. Pryor then got up to question her about a bunch of stuff. And I think he made her cry. The lady next to me in the courtroom leaned over and said, did he just make her cry? And I want you to be the judge. Tell me what you think with this line of questioning. But also the stairs, the one-story house, the fact that Pryor's been saying it's a one-story house. Who would know? The Gilberts. They were great friends. They'd been over to the house multiple times. So Pryor leads into the questioning with this sort of questioning of, is the house one story? And I'll play out the clip. You can hear how he questions her. You can hear her voice start to crack. Pryor apologizes, says it's okay. And then he sits down. He's done with his questioning. Here is that exchange.
It's house?
Yes.
Okay. And is it fair to say that it's a one-story house?
There's an addition to the house.
Right.
You walk through a breezeway, and then there's stairs that goes up.
Right. And when you say an addition, it's more of a building that's
Objection, Your Honor. Counsel's testifying. Witness has already said.
Sustained.
okay. Are you aware that attachment to the back of the house doesn't have any electric?
No, I wasn't aware of that.
Are you aware that the attachment to the house that build on doesn't have any heat?
Objection, Your Honor. Counsel's testifying. Facts not in evidence. Move to strike.
Sustained. Mr. Pryor, it's got to be questioning, not just testimony through your question.
Well, Judge, I'm asking her if she's aware.
Well, I know, but there's a proper way to do that with facts from the witness, not from you.
Do you have you been in that addition that's attached to the house?
I have.
Okay. Do you have any information about what utilities are available in that building?
I don't. I didn't look
Okay.
at that
Okay.
part.
And are you aware that nobody uses that?
Objection, Your Honor. Counsel's testifying or attempting to testify. Move to strike.
Sustained.
Do you have any knowledge about any of the family members utilizing any of that portion of the addition?
I knew that Garth had a ham radio set up, and I think a drum set. up
Okay.
there. I don't know on their living conditions.
Okay. Were you aware of their living conditions in the primary residence?
I just knew of where Tammy's room was at.
Okay, and that's Chad's room as well?
I assume so.
Okay, and then in the other bedroom would be whose room?
I don't know which rooms the kids, whose room was what.
Okay, at the time of Tammy's passing, do you know who was living in the residence at the time?
I believe Garth was.
Okay, anybody else?
I'm not sure if Seth was or not.
Okay,
He could have been.
okay, and then obviously you previously mentioned something about Emma living kitty corner from the house, right?
Right. And then Mark was coming home from his mission, so he would have lived there, but
Okay,
not yet.
and the other daughter lives somewhere in Utah, right?
Yeah.
Okay. Now, you indicated that Chad openly spoke to you about the Disneyland, discussed it with you openly, right?
Yeah, just that they were going to take the kids to Disneyland.
Okay, so at around the time of October, when I believe these discussions were in October, right?
Right.
He wasn't trying to hide his whereabouts in any way, was he?
He didn't with us.
And he wasn't trying to conceal where he was going on trips and vacations, correct?
No, not with us. He didn't.
And he openly discussed with you his plans for the future, correct?
That he was going to go to Hawaii and write a book.
Okay. And did you get the impression from Chad when he was talking about the children, that he felt the children were still alive?
I didn't know of missing children then.
Okay, well, that wasn't really my question. My question was, at the time he was talking to you about the children, did
Which-
she?
I'm
Go
sorry.
ahead. I'm sorry, ma'am. It's okay. I mean, I know this is nerve-wracking. And
I'm not sure which time.
Okay, it's okay. But at the time you've had discussions with Chad about the children, based on his demeanor, did you get the impression that he felt the children were still alive?
Objection, Your Honor, calls for speculation.
I felt like he was avoiding it. I didn't get I couldn't get a straight answer.
Okay. So when he told you that when the truth comes out and that you felt it was a custody case, that didn't give you the impression that when the truth came out, it was a custody case, that the children's whereabouts would be told to everybody?
That's what he told me, but I
Okay.
was confused.
Okay,
from
it's
the other-
okay. Judge, that's all I have. Thank you, Your Honor.
What do you think of that? Next, it was Todd Gilbert, Alice's wife. And Todd took the stand and conveyed to the jury about a visit he had with Chad the previous February. Now remember, Lori and Chad met the summer of 2018. Started their relationship right away. And then, or fall, I should say fall of 2018. Started their relationship. In February, Chad Daybell goes over to the Gilbert's house, says, I want to come over and talk to you. And this is what he says.
Do you recall Chad coming to your residence around February of 2019?
Yes.
Do you recall anything about that visit that stood out to you?
Yes. Myself and my wife were working on a bedroom floor trying to get some old tile out so we could put some carpet in. And Chad sent me a text, said he wanted to come over and talk to us. So he came over and we were finishing up, and he talked about some other stuff and on the way out, he says, I don't know if I should say this to you, but I feel like I should tell you that Tammy's mission is going to come to an end, or her life mission, before her 50th birthday.
At that time, did you know how old Tammy was?
No, I figured she was around 48, though, it seems like.
Okay. I was checking if that was frozen. So Chad says Tammy's mission's going to come to an end. Then, the day she died, the Gilberts went over there. So fast forward February, March, April, May, June, July, August, September. 8 months, 9 months. And after they had given the kids the breakfast, the Gilberts, he kind of pulled Chad aside and was like, I guess what you said came true. And Chad said, yeah, but I didn't tell the kids that, so don't talk too loud. Tell you what, if I had any sort of feeling that my wife was going to die within the next year or two, I would be telling her, honey, I just have this weird feeling you're going to die. Let's go to the doctor. Let's go figure out, let's make sure you're healthy. If you're going to Zumba every night and you're going to clogging and you're walking around the school and you're active at work, I don't know. Still, if I have this, strong feeling, and then if I'm going to go tell my friends, I don't get it. If I had a friend that told me that, I once had a friend send me an email, probably 10 years ago. It said, Nate, if I die, here is how I want my funeral to be. And he sent me the funeral program. He sent me information about his belongings, things like that. I got it like at 11 o'clock at night. I was living in Virginia. I called him the next morning. I said, what is this about? He's like, just in case. Happy to report he's still alive. I talked to him about an hour ago. But I was like, what are you talking about? Like, you're not going to die. And if you think you are you okay mentally? Anyway, that's what happened. Well, then we learn a little bit more about the request for bond and all those wedding photos. And the request wasn't just, hey, you're my good friend. Any chance you could give me $1 million to bond my new wife out of jail, the cute blonde? No, it was more than that. Or different than that, I should say. Here's what he said.
Did you ever have occasion to talk with Chad about how his kids felt about Lori?
Yes, when we would see him, he would already kind of bring it up himself that they were fine with Lori, that Tammy had appeared to him in spirit, I don't know, at least twice, and said that she was doing fine and that she understood the plan, that she was going to move on in the spirit world, and then that Chad's mission was to be married to Lori, and that his children were basically becoming fine with that thing, which seemed odd to us, but.
And he specifically indicated Tammy had come to him in a vision or something,
Yes,
and she'd indicated she was fine with everything.
yes.
After that visit around Thanksgiving, did Chad ever, or I think it was a little before Thanksgiving, did Chad ever return to your residence at a later time?
I can't say for sure, but it seems like it. There was about 3 different times.
And I think you said that your understanding was Chad and Lori's plan was to eventually move to Hawaii permanently.
Yes.
Did some additional visits happen before they moved?
Not that I can recall. The last time we seen him was before Thanksgiving.
And after they'd moved, at some point, did Chad end up coming to your residence?
Yes, he came to our residence after Lori was brought back to Rexburg and after he got back into the area.
And do you recall why Chad came to your residence?
Yes, I remember that when he walked in the door, he says that the Christ had sent me here to ask you guys if you would be willing to put your home up for bond to get Tammy out of jail. Not Tammy, excuse me, Lori out of jail.
Christ sent me here to ask if you would be willing to put your house up for bond to get Lori out of jail. They said no. They didn't say, tell Jesus no. They just said no. And they didn't do it. I know that Chad contacted multiple people in Idaho and Utah trying to come up with that bond money. In fact, there was one Friday night. Mark Means was at the jail with Lori, and there was a bail bondsman that pulled up and went into the jail, and we saw it. We were out there, all the reporters, thinking, is there, right after the bond was reduced, is she really going to be able to post $1 million? Normally when you post bond, you can post 10%, and then they let you out. That's kind of your collateral. But in a case like this, the bond companies wanted the whole thing, or at least security, because what if Chad and Lori take off? Then they're on the hook. The bond company has to go to court and pay the $1 million if the client doesn't show up. Makes me wonder too where Chad and Lori would have gone. Do you ever wonder about that? Like, had she been able to post bond, would they have taken off? I mean, the police were on their tail. I would have followed them if I could, wherever they go. Would they have disappeared into Mexico? I don't know. So didn't post the bond. We know that Lori has not posted bond. Chad never posted bond. Chad ended up being arrested. And the next witness was one of Tammy's colleagues and the teacher of the Zumba class. And Janice Olson is her name, which ironically is my grandmother's name. Janice Olson Cope, C-O-P-E, is my grandma. My grandma was not on the stand today. Janice Olson was. She's a first grade teacher, and she talked about how healthy Tammy was. Tammy came to the exercise classes. She saw Tammy every day at school, multiple times a day. They'd have lunch together. Tammy was in the library. If Miss Olson was teaching a class about insects, Tammy would find books on insects and bring them to the classroom. She'd gather up the books for the students before they came into the library. I mean, she was just one of those lovely, lovely librarians. Then Taylor Ballard took the stand, and she's an insurance broker for Ballard Insurance, and she helps people get like private plans for your health insurance if your like work doesn't provide it or whatnot. And she actually handled the insurance plans for the school system where Tammy worked. So when Chad came in the first time, she didn't really know the story. He just said, I need health insurance. My wife died. I want to be sure my kids are on it. He met with this insurance broker multiple times, and they texted each other and emailed back and forth, and never once mentioned JJ or Tylee. But he did mention Lori. In fact, after this case hit the news in March of 2020, after Lori's arrested, the kids are still missing. The couple has fled to Hawaii. He goes back to meet with Taylor Ballard, and this is how that experience went.
I checked to see what her life insurance amount was and if it had been paid out yet.
And what did you find?
That it had been paid out and that her most recent open enrollment, which was in August for September 1st effective date, that she had upped it to the max.
And is it normal for an insurance broker to look at those types of things?
Yes.
Why?
To make sure the beneficiaries are correct, to make sure that we have the right amounts on there since it has to do with their income, what they qualify for.
And I believe you were starting to try to explain, you did have a contact with Chad on was it the 1st of March, or when was the next contact?
March 11th.
Thank you. Can you please describe to the jury what was the nature of that contact?
He had come into my office to inquire about getting health insurance for his wife.
At that point, did he tell you who his wife was?
Yes.
Who did he say?
He said her name was Lori Daybell, and he wrote her name on a sticky note, Lori Ryan Daybell.
Did he happen to mention to you when he had married her?
He said November 5th, 2019.
What was your reaction to his inquiry about adding his wife at that point?
Well, he had stated to me that he had stated to me that she was incarcerated, and so I told him she wouldn't necessarily need insurance right now, but he was worried about something happening to her. And I told him she would be covered under the state as long as she was incarcerated.
Did you have any further discussion about how to potentially insure her if she were to no longer be incarcerated?
Yes, when he told me the date of marriage, I told him that that was outside of the enrollment window. It had been longer than 60 days. He said that she should be getting out the following week. And I told him that we could use that as a qualifying event.
So was a plan made then at that point to do so if she became unincarcerated?
Yes.
Just the general nature of that conversation, was there anything unusual about that conversation?
He, no. No.
At any point in that conversation, did he ever bring up anything about his computer?
I was going through all of the information, confirming what was different and what was the same. And when we got to the income, he said, they confiscated my computer, so I haven't been able to pay myself yet.
And what was your reaction to that?
I said, they.
Okay. And did he explain who he's talking about?
He said, the FBI.
Did he say anything else to you about the situation in that conversation?
About the confiscation?
Just his personal situation generally.
Just that he was wanting to make sure that he, his wife, and his son, Mark, would be covered.
The other thing that she testified about is the rings that were on Chad's finger. The first time she saw him, he had on she said a turquoise ring, a wedding ring. And then the next, and she wondered what that ring, he was wondering was that Tammy's wedding ring with him, or was it Lori's? And maybe it wasn't the first time she saw him, but one of the first times she saw him. Then when she saw him in March, the ring was black. So she assumed that turquoise ring was Tammy's and that the black ring was Lori's. But we know, excuse me, that Lori and Chad had those malachite green rings. So just an interesting observation. Everybody, so many of you have asked if Chad wears a wedding ring in court. I have not seen one, by the way. And I don't know if inmates are allowed jewelry. I don't think that they can wear jewelry, even rings. But anyway. So that was our testimony today. Those were the witnesses. Again, you can go watch it all. Today was a fascinating day. It moved quick. There were 5 on the stand. We're moving through quick. Tomorrow should be good. Tomorrow should be good. Watch. Be sure you watch, unless things change. I mean, every day's good. I hate to say good because it's a trial, but should be interesting testimony. That's how I should say it. Now, I do want to play a clip. Some young men from Rexburg, brothers, came with their dad to the courthouse today. And they wanted to see this trial. This case unfolded in their backyard. They followed it for years, more so their parents. And I believe these are the youngest people I've seen attend the court. And they stayed the whole day, and they were engaged. And I caught up with them after. Let me play our quick interview. It's quite short, just so you can hear their takes. And as you're watching, if you've come to court, I'd love to hear your takes in the comments. Here we go. Okay, tell me your names.
McKay Googleman. Grant Googleman.
Sorry, what was that?
Grant Googleman.
Grant, okay. Grant and McKay. Why did you guys come today?
Well, my dad was in town and he's been following this case quite a bit. And also, it's, as close to home as it can get. A lot of the stuff happened miles from our house in Rexburg. And so we figured while he's in town, we might as well go.
And what'd you think?
The trial.
I thought it was really interesting and fascinating how it worked in the courtroom and stuff like that. I thought the way that Pryor talked was interesting and all the objections and stuff like that. I thought it was cool.
Yeah. What about you?
It was really interesting to watch. One thing that I thought was pretty cool was seeing back when COVID happened, we all kind of got quarantined and it's all my parents would talk about, and seeing things brought up today that I remember hearing real time while it was happening back then, and it was just interesting to see how it all tied together.
Or how they talk about Salem and that's in our stake.
Yeah.
We know people that go to the Salem ward still.
Yeah.
You know people. Did you know the teacher on the stand today?
No.
No.
No, I don't think so.
Okay.
Yeah.
So would you want to come back?
I do.
Yeah, definitely.
Yeah, it caught your
I-
interest.
Yeah.
Yes.
I originally was a little bit hesitant to come sit here for, 7 hours, but by the end, it's very interesting to see it all.
Way more entertaining than school.
Better than school. Well, you probably learned a lot of different things here today.
Yeah,
Anything you want to add?
Not really.
Good.
Me neither.
Okay, so just some words of wisdom there from the youth, the young people who are coming. We've seen old people, young people, male, female, mainly female. That's okay, men, women, who have come to the trial. And if you want to come, you don't have to make a reservation now. You can just show up. The line starts to form around 7:15-ish. And everybody has gotten in every day, unless you're late. If you're late, you cannot get in the courtroom. So there's that. I forgot last night. I wanted to share this photo. I'm going to share it tonight. This is Tammy Daybell with her sister Samantha. Adorable. So many years ago. Tammy's birthday is coming up here on the 4th. And it's wild to look back at this photo and you think about your kid photos and when you were that young, to think, if those girls knew then what happened now. I mean, you never, ever, ever imagine that you're going to be in this situation. But hopefully during all of this, we can pause and think about Tammy and her family and JJ and Tylee and Charles Vallow and everybody who's affected by this as the wheels of justice continue to turn. All right, I want to get to your questions, but I have to tell you, last night I talked about these t-shirts that say life goal, keep my mugshot off eastidahonews.com. And I told you that we were going to order like 100 of them. And if you were interested, you could go on to our website and order one. Boy, did you. Wow, I'm blown away. I couldn't believe it. My phone was, I think we had 300 orders. You all are amazing. So don't worry. If you ordered, one of you emailed me really worried that you weren't going to get the shirt because it was over 100. We're going to place the order. We're going to get the design and everything done Friday this week. And then we're told the shirts can be here hopefully next week. And then our team, we're going to have a t-shirt packing party. And we're probably going to throw like some swag, East Idaho News buttons in with some of the shirts, just random. We can't do it with all of you. I'm sorry. But thank you. Thank you. If you have no clue what I'm talking about, these are the shirts. They say life goal, keep my mugshot off eastidahonews.com. We sold these several years ago, before this case even happened, and we sold out of them. And I happened to wear mine on this show the other night, and many of you contacted us saying, how do I get one? Well, you can go to eastidahonews.com/shop, SHOP. The t-shirt is $25. It includes shipping anywhere in America. If you buy 2 of this shirt or any of the others, get to the Chopper Fan. We have some Secret Santa shirts. It's 2 for $40, and that does include shipping. And we'll get those to you. I hope this month. I'm determined to get these out as often as we can. And I think there are still a few more hoodies, maybe like 5. So those are the hoodies, and just thank you all so much. If you want some other merch, we work with a third party to get you mugs and other hats and stuff like that. And you can click on that. But I just have to thank you. You don't have to buy anything. I'm just happy you're here. Really, anyone that goes into journalism isn't really after it to make a ton of money because there's not a lot of money. We do it for the passion of the job. We do it because we feel like it's a community service, and that's why I do my job. And so the fact that you all would support us on East Idaho News by wearing around one of our shirts is just really cool. And I've said it before, if you ever get arrested and you're in one of those mugshot shirts and you're wearing it during your mugshot, I might just have to bail you out. I might just have to. Might. Please note that. And I promise I won't say that Jesus told me to come to you for bail. I promise that. And anyway, let's get to your questions. Let's get to your shout outs. Here we go. Okay. Here we go. Shout outs. Holy smokes. We got some good ones. Brenda Despain. Hi, Brenda. Good to see you here. I understand you watch every night, even when you are on your girls' trip vacation. Well, thank you. Thank you. You must have good friends if you're willing to put up with me on your vacation. Nate, I'd ask if you could give a shout out to your beautiful wife and adorable kids. We as the public appreciate her holding down the house and supporting you in your journalism work. She is a gem and you are a blessed man. Cindy, that is so nice. I can't even tell you how true that is. I called her just before I came on and she's running everywhere, all day. And I don't even know if she's watched one Courtroom Insider this trial, because she's just so busy. And I have to tell you, you are right. So honey, Erica, I love you. Emmy, Everett, Elliot, they went to the eye doctor today. Good news. One of our kids, the eyesight improved. The other one, not so much. They told Emmy she could start experimenting with contacts. I don't know if we'll go 100% full time because we just love her glasses. But when she does her plays and productions, she'll probably wear contacts and braces. Probably braces is coming. And by the way, tomorrow Emmy's interviewing Neil McCoy, the country singer, who does the Pledge of Allegiance every day. You'll have to watch that interview. I get sidetracked. Ames89, hello. Heather O'Hara, Norma Gira, Leah Yvonne, Rose M, Amanda Simpson, Toby Walker, Michelle Chapman, Jana Kobler, Sherry Daniel. Bless you all for watching. Thank you. Pam asks, does Chad still wear his wedding ring? I don't think so, Pam. Scotty, do you feel, in your opinion, the prosecutor is taking the right approach with this case, or should they have done something different? Scotty, that's a good question. I think that, I think they're doing a good job. I do. I think Pryor's doing a good job. I have not seen any major fumbles. Maybe you all have. I haven't. It's running differently than Lori Vallow's case, for sure. The order of witnesses. Oh my gosh, you guys are ordering t-shirts one after the other again. We're going to have to order 1,000. Wow, if we sell 1,000 shirts, we'll do something amazing. Anyway, so yeah, it's a different trial. And I think the prosecution's doing a fine job. The thing that you have to think in your mind, well, every morning when I wait in line, I try to talk to somebody about how they think the case is going. And I think the response I get the most is, I hope the jury's following it all. Like, I hope the jury gets and connects all the dots with all the people and all the facts and everything. They did in Lori Vallow's case. I mean, it can get confusing, and they don't have a summary at the end of the day, but I think they're doing great. Cindy asks why the federal agent was not on camera yesterday or on Monday. Probably because he's a federal agent and he goes undercover a lot. Sometimes that happens with undercover officers, even when we'll go up to a scene and they'll say, can you please not film the undercover guys? And we'll respect that. Jessica says, before the Daybell case, was John Pryor a trial lawyer? He doesn't seem experienced in courtroom procedure, such as waiting for a ruling on an objection. Jessica, John Pryor did not do much criminal work. This is his first death penalty case. He does a lot of civil work. I've never seen him in the courtroom before. So I don't know. I do think sometimes he gets a little bit ahead of himself, and he would admit that, where he gets talking so fast and he doesn't wait and the judge has to calm him down. But I'm not too familiar with how he's been there. Ivy asks if the public is still able to purchase Chad's books, and if so, who gets the proceeds? If he goes to prison, will he still be able to sell the books? Can he write more books and still publish them? I think you can probably still buy Chad's books. I don't know where the money goes. Probably if whoever's selling them on Amazon. I don't know the status of his company, Spring Creek Books. Maybe his kids are managing that. And I honestly don't know if how it works, where if the state comes in and automatically shuts it down. He cannot make money off of a new book. Like, that's not allowed. In Idaho, there are slayer laws, which means you can't make money from a crime. So even if he were to write a book, he couldn't make money, assuming he's found guilty. If he's found not guilty, he can. Does the LDS have 10 commandments? I believe so, yes. And there's probably more than the 10, but yeah, the LDS Church does believe in the 10 commandments. Cindy says, is Nate Eaton called as a defense? Is Nate Eaton called as a witness for the defense? I don't think so. Do you know something, Cindy? I don't know if you're talking about the subpoena Pryor gave me a couple of years ago. He subpoenaed me, and we fought it, and he quashed it. I don't think I would be called as a witness, and if he tried to call me, I would fight it, because I'm there to report and not be part of it. And I wonder what he would ask me. That might be kind of fun, I guess, to see what he would ask me. But again, if you're a witness, you're not supposed to be in the courtroom the whole time. And I've been there a day or two. How can Pryor ask questions to witnesses that came exclusively from Lori's trial? Example, the medical examiner was asked questions that have not been asked in this trial but were in Lori's. How can Pryor ask questions to... Oh, so you're saying he was asked questions about stuff that wasn't in this trial but was in Lori's trial. I think that's what you're saying. He's not supposed to bring up Lori's trial, and he's not supposed to. And if he does, the jury's not going to know what he's talking about. So yeah, I'm not sure about that one. I don't know the answer. Suzanne says, if the jury believes Chad was in the conspiracy, can they also find him guilty in the murder, even if they aren't sure who in the group did the actual killings? Great question, Suzanne. Yes, they can. It's like the example that Lindsay Blake used about the Super Bowl team. The Kansas City Chiefs, almost said something else, won the Super Bowl. Should everybody on the team get a ring, even though they all didn't do the same jobs? Even the guy that sat on the bench the whole time? Well, yeah, he was part of the team. She was trying to prove that even if the guy sat on the bench in the conspiracy theory, didn't do the actual killings, are they part of the team? Are they responsible for the win? Are they responsible for the crime? So yes, you can get that. You can get charged. You can be found guilty of that. Kaylin asks, why on earth is Pryor on his own? I guess he couldn't find a capital qualified second seat, but he isn't using a regular second attorney or paralegal? He's not. He's not. He says he couldn't find another attorney to help him out, death penalty qualified. He's had 4 years, 3 years, and it's expensive. It is expensive. Not saying that, he shouldn't have done it, but he tried to go before the judge and get money from the state to support him. That was denied. So he's on his own. And I have to tell you, no matter what you think of Pryor, that's got to be exhausting. Look at how the prosecutors, they each have their witness. They know what questions to ask. They know what's next. He's got to keep up with all of them and do this on his own. So, yeah, and Jim Archibald and John Thomas, those were 2 for Lori. And they kept up. Oh my gosh, you guys just keep ordering shirts. It's amazing. What happens if someone doesn't want to testify? Can they avoid the subpoena forever or just say they won't talk? Well, there's a couple things. If you're served a subpoena, technically, you should take it. I remember one time in my early days of news, someone was trying to subpoena another one of the reporters at my station. And my news director said, don't take that subpoena. You're not testifying. So when they came up to serve it, she refused to take it. She said, I'm not taking it. You can't force it on me. Ran around and locked herself in the bathroom. I don't know what she did. So I don't know. You should take it. I guess there's ways around. You could tell the prosecutor or the defense, I really don't want to testify. And then I guess if you could watch every bit of testimony. And then when the judge says, did you watch the testimony? And you say, yeah, I watched it all. That could get you off from testifying. Probably not a real ethical thing to do, but you could do that. What point in the timeline did Mark come home from his mission, and did he fulfill his calling from Yvonne? Yes, he did fulfill his calling. He came home. I don't remember the exact date, but he came home after his mom had died. He did stay on his mission for her funeral. He did not come home for it, but he came home several months after. Lisa says, who are the people sitting behind the defense table? Are they court staff, or does Pryor have a paralegal team? So they are court staff, those ladies. Yeah, one is Judge Boyce's defense or his staff attorney. The other is a lady who's running the equipment, like the live stream and whatnot. And there's a few other people that are court staff. He does not have a paralegal there. Some days he has like his private investigator there with another lady. I don't know who she is. They sit on the defense bench. When Pryor leans against the podium, is he aiming himself toward the jury or witness? Or is there some other purpose on that? When Pryor leans on the podium, he'll often lean in the podium, ask a question, and then look at the jury. So when you see him turn this way, he's looking at the jury. Sometimes he'll turn this way to look at the prosecutors, but not often. He'll turn this way. I want to get back to the subpoena question because somebody made a really good point that people who are subpoenaed but refuse to testify can be held in contempt until they testify. So it's quite serious. You kind of have to do it. We saw the other day when John Pryor tried to have Melanie Gibb served with a subpoena at the courthouse on a break. She refused to take it, went running in the courtroom. Pryor came out. It was kind of a bit of a show. Like, where is she? Where is she? And she ended up, Pryor got to question her, as we saw. Nate, when you interview Summer Shiflett in the past, I've never interviewed Summer. Summer has not done an interview with me. Or at CrimeCon, are there questions or topics that she has stated are off the table? I'm interviewing Summer at CrimeCon at the end of May, and there are no topics off the table that she's agreed to answer whatever. I honestly haven't thought about I've thought a little bit about the topics, but we'll only have 50 minutes too, so there's a lot. But I also want her to say what she feels like she has to say. If so, can you tell us what those are? The topics? Well, the topics, I'm sure you can imagine, for what's her thought to the verdict. Does she talk to Lori? How has this affected her family? Just off the top of my head, those are some of them. I understand if you can't agree either. I adore the little black kitty statue in your son's room when you did Courtroom Insider a few years ago. Does it have a name? Where can I get one? Jeez, I think he got that in Mexico when we were on vacation a little while ago. Thank you. That was from Trash Boat Barbie. Trash Boat, you have the most unique name. And you want me to adopt a live action kitty? Well, okay, we'll see about that. Okay, a couple more. Will Chad have to pay for the autopsy done on Tammy? No, the state will pay for that, Nancy asks. Ashley says, how does the jury seem to be reacting to Pryor? The jury is quite professional, although today I think one was dozing off. I think he was getting tired. Either that or his eyes were nearly closed during the opening part of the Emmy, the medical examiner. But other than that, I don't see them really reacting much to there's no signs of like disgust or empathy. They're very straight-faced. They are doing exactly what the judge has asked them to do. It's amazing too. We went through Lori's trial all 6 weeks, and none of the jurors were dismissed. None of them had to leave. There weren't any issues. Never had to skip a day because a juror had to go to the hospital. I think in Donald Trump's trial the other day, there was no court because one of them had a dentist appointment. They had a toothache. We haven't seen any of that with this jury. So that would be wild if one of them got dismissed. How old were the Daybell kids at the time of Tammy's death? They were older. They were all grown. They were all adults. The youngest was 19, 20 on his mission, and the oldest was married, and a couple were married, actually. I don't know the exact ages, though. How many kids lived with Chad at the time of Tammy's death? I believe just Garth. Emma lived kitty corner. Mark was on his mission. Seth may have been in and out of the home. And then Leah's married and lives in Utah. Has Lori been excommunicated from the LDS Church? That is a good question. We know Chad has, for sure. I've had that confirmed. Lori, I don't think she has. And I think it's because she may have jumped around so often to different congregations that in order to be excommunicated, your local leader needs to initiate it. I will see what more I can find out about that, but I don't know if she has. And last question. Do you know who has custody of Brandon and Melanie's kids? I believe it is shared custody, but I don't want to, I don't know. And I won't go down that road just because it's kids, and I always feel bad for the kids, you know. If Garth did have a ham radio set up in the addition, how was it powered? Pryor is fishing and he's not very good at it. That's from Richard. Richard, someone sent me a photo of the upstairs and there was a lamp. I don't think the lamp was on, but that tells me there may have been a plug for that. Shout out one more to Duty Ron. Duty Ron, thanks for watching. Thank you all for watching. I hope that today was interesting, informative. It was for me, for sure. And it's great to see some energy and enthusiasm happening there in the courtroom. Again, tomorrow should be an exciting day. It's Thursday tomorrow. Then we have court on Friday. Then we're back at it Monday. And prosecution so far, by my count, has called 39 witnesses. Vince Kayakamanu was called twice. So if you count the twice, that'd be 40, but it's still 39 witnesses. And once they get through their numbers, if they're doing 5 a day, I don't know, maybe they rest end of next week, just me totally guessing, or the following week, and then the defense has their witnesses. And of course, John Pryor says he plans to call a lot more. So it seems like every night I get longer and longer here talking with you. So thank you all for watching. Have a good night. Thank you for ordering shirts. They're rolling in like crazy. And I've decided that I think when the trial's over, I want to get some of these mugshot shirts and give them all to the prosecutors and the defense attorneys and the cops, the officers, the deputies that work in the courthouse. Maybe Judge Boyce too. Could you see Judge Boyce sporting one of those shirts? That'd be fun. All right, guys. Thanks for watching. Have a good night. See you tomorrow.